Hey, hey. See if we can't get this a little bit better. Yeah, I'm having same issues as this morning here. I don't understand this. Afternoon, afternoon. How we doing? Still seeing a few little things popping up on my screen. How are things on your end? Everybody hear me at least? Hmm. Yes, maybe we do need divine intervention, Pat. I agree. Hmm. Okay, let's see. My screen is kind of doing the same thing it did this morning. Uh, I understand. I did some speed checks, tests. We shut everything off in our house for internet and everything, or Wi-Fi. No one else is on it, so I don't know why it's doing this again. But all right. So long as you can hear me, that's the most important. I mean, if you don't see me, it's okay. Um, so really, the next little section here, it's all about how fast you can type in the answer. So I did see Pastor Matt is with us. So Pastor Matt is going to record who answers the question first and obviously correctly for our little quiz. All right. So let me see if Pastor Matt can give me a thumbs up. Oh, if you can hear me and he's all good, you can take down the first correct answer. We need it for historical sake. There is a prize. That's why I want someone to record it, or prizes. So, Pastor Matt, you're good with that? Take down people's names who get it right, or you can see it in the chat. Okay. All right, so here we go. The first question: what did Daniel and his friends eat instead of the meat from the king? Dum dum. Work on my eyebrow exercises. What did Daniel and his friends eat instead of meat? Oh, we have an answer. Woo! They're coming in hot and heavy. I'm so glad Pastor Matt's got to figure out who answered first. All right. I am seeing all kinds of right answers there, but Pastor Matt got it written down, or he will have written down who got it first. Pulse is correct, and that's found in verse 12 of chapter 1. Okay. Now this one, it's a little bit harder. All right. The three Jewish boys' names. The three Jewish boy names that were friends with Daniel. I want their Jewish names, not the Babylonian. The Jewish boys' names, the three friends of Daniel, their Jewish names. Oh, I'm seeing some answers come in. All right. Mishap. I think that's a mishap on typing. I hope, Pat. That's a good one, though. Auto spell. Yep, this is great. Yep, the pain of autocorrect. It's real. All right, so Marcadamo came in first. Good work. So this is true or false? True or false? Daniel and his friends were in their 20s when they were taken into captive. Daniel and his friends were in their 20s when they were taken into captivity. True or false? That's correct. It is false. They referred to as child earlier in the scriptures in verse 3, but taking the children of Israel into captivity. So it's not a reference to just all the children of Israel, like the whole nation, but referring to younger people. So yes, that's false. They were not in their 20s. All right, next one. And I think Brenda might have got that one first. I don't want to speak. Pastor Matt's taking care of that. Okay, Brenda was first. All right. The next one. The name of the eunuch who took care of the Jewish boys. The name of the eunuch who took care of the Jewish boys. I'll check times. There you go. Make sure everybody is on the track. Good work. Yep, good answers. Ashpenaz is mentioned, but I was thinking Melzar. Melzar is who I was thinking because that's the ones they went to talk to. Daniel did about the food and things. So Melzar was the correct answer. That's the one I was looking for. So whoever that was, Pastor Matt will let us know on our little feed here who that was. And then the last question I have. All right, here we go. How long was Daniel and his 3 friends in training before they saw the king? How long were they in training? How many days, weeks, months, years? How long were they in training? The correct answer is found in verse number 5. So nourish them 3 years. So 3 years is the amount of time that these lads, after they were taken into captivity, were fed, trained, and then pushed off to meet the king and serve the empire whichever way they wanted. So I am a little frustrated with this Facebook Live tonight. It's all bleeping in front of me. Oh, don't like that. All right, so at the end of chapter 1, and then beginning in chapter 2, I'm not going to read all Daniel chapter 2. That's just a lot of verses. That's why I mentioned to you on Saturday this morning for you to get into that and read it all, understand what's happening. So I'm not going to read it all, and I'll be really honest. It's difficult to look at the screen too much when all the flipping going on, but I'm going to do my very best. So from chapter 1 to chapter 2, there is a great change in the palace, in the sense at the end of chapter 1, we see Daniel and his friends were recognized and the king was going forward. Things were pretty good. Now in chapter 2, King Nebuchadnezzar is not a happy man. Verses 1 to 13 talks about where Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. And he is out of control. He doesn't know what's happening. He's very upset because he can't remember the dream. And then he does not know the interpretation of it. So the king is out of control, but thankfully God is always in control. Good lesson for me, Ryan, right now when Facebook is not working for me. God is in control, all right? So this chapter really outlines world history and future events. So it's a very exciting chapter, and understanding this chapter really helps us as we'll go further in Revelation in the weeks ahead or months ahead. I don't know exactly how that's going to pan out yet. But it really assists you when you get this down. It really helps you understand what Revelation is talking about. So it's a building upon each other. So verses 1 to 13, again, I'm not going to read them all. I'm going to read the dream and things when we get there. So Nebuchadnezzar comes into Jerusalem to conquer, but he's not yet king. And I mentioned that because it says in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, and then in the first chapter it says the third year. So you'd be like, the Bible has an error. No, there's no error. He was acting on behalf of his father, Nabopolassar, who was back in Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar actually went to Jerusalem. Nebuchadnezzar stayed home. And so they don't contradict. It's just the way it is. So now it's actually his reign. He's not anybody else. He was in control. And this dream comes about because the king is pondering about the future, and we'll read that in verse 29 in just a moment. And he's thinking about, will his kingdom last? He's thinking long term. So God gives him a dream describing the future, but he couldn't understand it. He actually forgets it. He brings in his magicians, his wise men, soothsayers, and he wants them to interpret the dream, and he wants them to know the dream. And the men's like, well, we can't do that. Only God can do that. A God. They didn't say God. They said gods. And they don't dwell with men. That's what they said in that scripture. And the king is upset. If there was ever a character study on how to be totally upset and a proudful man, Nebuchadnezzar is a guy who has a lot of pride and he cannot control himself. So he tries to get these guys killed immediately because they can't answer his questions, and he's not going to give them any opportunity to try to mess up the dream or anything of that nature. So verse number 14, Daniel summons, just like all the rest of the wise men that are in the empire, and he's told what's happening, and he confronts the guard. The executioner is coming to get him. He says, hey, let us do something here. Let's see what we can do. And he was very bold. He was righteous. He was bold as a lion. And God overruled in that conversation. And it's kind of like Proverbs chapter 21, verse 1 says, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord. As the rivers are water, he turned it whithersoever he will. And the king gave Daniel time to go forward to find out what happened. So in verses 14 down to verse 18, Daniel gets together with his comrades there, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions. That's in verse number 17. And they pray and they ask the Lord's mercies to be showed what it is. And that's a great application truth for us that when we have trouble, it's a very wise thing to pray. If any lack wisdom, let him ask of God, James 1:5. Ask and it shall be given unto you. That's what's saying in Matthew chapter 7, verse 7. So that should be the actions of everyday believers, is to look to the Lord to provide for us. Give us the answer. What do we need to take care of what's before us? And God reveals the dream to Daniel. And instead of rushing to the king in verses 19 to 23, Daniel stops and he praises God. He gives God the praise. And it's not about Daniel's boasting. It's all about giving God the glory. He took none of it for himself. And I really believe there's no limit for an individual who will let God have all the glory. It's not about them. It's all about God. And that's a truth we all need to be reminded of, that it is God that allows, not us. It's God. All right. So now verses 24 to 45, it lays out the dream and then the interpretation. The first part of the verses 24 on to 30 is really about the guard taking Daniel and goes through the whole spiel. So we're going to pick it up in verse number 31. Thou, O king, sawest, and behold, a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before thee, and the form thereof was terrible. This image head was of fine gold, his breast and arms of silver, his belly, his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet of iron, feet part of iron and part of clay. Thou sawest still that a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet. And there were of iron and clay, and brake them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain, and filled the whole earth. So we see this is the dream. This was what Nebuchadnezzar could not remember. It was gone. So Daniel comes to the king, tells him the dream. Huge statue, man with gold head, breast and arms of silver, belly and thigh of brass, and legs of iron, and the feet of iron and clay. Then he sees this stone that he did not see a hand cut out, comes down and smashes it all to dust. And that stone grew to fill the whole earth like a mountain. Now, this is referring to the latter days. Back in 28, verse 28 of this scripture, but there is a God in heaven that revealeth secrets, and maketh known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream and the visions thy had upon thy bed are these. So the Lord lays it out. The latter days. So each metal represents a different kingdom. 4 of these kingdoms have disappeared. They are done. First one was the Babylonian, gold. The second was the Medo-Persian Empire. That's the breast and arms of silver. Then came the Greek Empire and the belly and thigh of bronze. Then came Rome, and that was the legs. And you can categorize that as the Eastern and Western Roman empires. And then the fifth part, the feet of iron and clay, which represents a very brittle kingdom at the end times, a continuation of the Roman Empire, but divided in 10 kingdoms, the 10 toes. And the final human kingdom on earth will be that of the Antichrist during the last part of the tribulation. And how will it all end? Well, Christ, the stone, smites the nations and sets up his kingdom. This image is then a picture of world history and yet to come, the future. You can see the materials in this dream decrease. in weight. Gold to clay, top heavy. Gold is heavy. Clay is not. And it's easily to push over. And men and women think that the human civilization is so great and enduring. Really, it is brittle. Note too, the value decreases. Gold. Who would not want to have a pile of gold right now? Okay, silver to bronze, iron to clay. Okay, mankind likes to project, likes to talk about how we're getting better and better. That's what they say. Human civilization is getting better and better. The reality is, it's getting weaker and cheaper. Though that's contrary to what the world would say, but in the eyes of God, the effects of sin is having its effect. It's not making it better; it's making it worse and worse and worse. And there's also the decrease in beauty and glory. Gold is certainly the most beautiful, more beautiful than iron mixed with clay. And there's a decrease in strength. Gold is very strong, clay is not. All right. And as we approach the end of human history, we see the progression of a weaker and weaker. Every successive kingdom that's mentioned here has its own strength. Romans were a tremendous, I guess they could be called the first world order of military. I mean, they were superpower, all right, militarily. But throughout history, I mean, it's just getting weaker and weaker and weaker, and that really helps us understand the end times, folks. What we've seen in the last 6 weeks, the pandemonium, the fear that's been incited, some real, some incited, and just over the top, and so many things. Just opens the curtains just a little bit for us to see what it's going to be like when the rapture takes place and the tribulation begins. Just a little peek. And when that occurs, it shows us so much better why the Antichrist will be able to organize a world government. All the nations will be weak. They'll want one dictator just to be able to survive. One person, rule us. We can't do it on our own. Each of these kingdoms, they had a different form of government. Babylon was ruled by an absolute dictator, a monarch. Okay, there was a number of them. The Medo-Persian Empire, they had a king, but they worked through princes and established laws, and we'll see that as we go through the book of Daniel. They had the laws of the Medes and the Persians. Greece operated through a king and an army. And Rome was supposed to be a republic, but it was actually more of the military ruling through laws. All right. And when you come to think and read of the iron and clay, we have our present governments, and the iron and clay represents law and justice. The clay represents mankind. Together they make up democracy. We live in a democracy. What's the strength of the democracy? Law. I mean, as long as we're obeying the law, democracy works. What's its weakness? Humans. They don't like laws. We want to do our own thing. And so we see that today, that lawlessness comes when human nature refuses to be bound by God's order and laws. And God has ordained governments. He talks about that in Peter. That these are ordained of me, men of authority. So this entire picture is not a very optimistic one. Nebuchadnezzar saw that his own kingdom would fall one day. He wasn't given the exact day, but he was told, your kingdom will fall, and the Medes and the Persians. Now, he didn't understand who that was going to be, who would take them over, but that happened in 538 BC. The Medes and the Persians took over, but then they would be conquered by the Greeks in 330 BC. And then the same thing happened to the Greeks, this time by the Romans in 146 BC. The Roman Empire outwardly would disappear in 476 AD. but its laws, its philosophies, its institutions would continue. They continue into the day. Takes us right down to the feet of clay to the day. A lot of our Western laws can be traced all the way back to Roman times. Institutions, the Roman Senate, give you a great example. Like a lot of things came down from that empire to us today. And the only hope for this world, is Jesus Christ. Amen. That's the only hope. He's the only hope is Jesus. And he's going to come again, where the rapture takes place. And then after that 7 years tribulation, the Lord returns. And when he comes, he conquers all nations. None stand before him. And he establishes that millennial reign for 1,000 years. Millennium meaning 1,000 years. Verse 46. Then the king Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshipped Daniel and commanded that they should offer an oblation and sweet odors unto him. And the king answered unto Daniel and said, of a truth it is, your God is a God of gods and of Lord of kings and a revealer of secrets, seeing thou couldst reveal this secret. Then the king made Daniel a great man and gave him many great gifts and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. Then Daniel requested of the king, and he sent Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gate of the king. So he's promoted. The king kept his promise because he had said earlier in this chapter, whoever figures this out, I'm going to give them gifts. I'm going to promote them. And now Daniel didn't say it was him. He gave God the glory, but he was honored. The Lord honored his faithfulness, and he did not compromise his convictions. So he sat at the gate, which he just didn't sit there and eat snacks. All right, this was an indication of a place of authority. Daniel now becomes a significant leader in the Babylonian Empire. And note, we can see that Daniel didn't keep the honors for himself. He asked that his three friends share the promotion, and they serve as well. And we see again Daniel just having that sweet spirit, unselfish spirit, great humility. And we're going to meet these kingdoms again in Daniel chapter 7. And I hope the Facebook Live will be working wonderfully then. And no blipping, okay? But when we get to Daniel 7, we'll meet them as wild beasts, because that's how God views it. God's not impressed with gold, silver, bronze. None of that impressed God. He sees the heart of man, and he knows that these kingdoms are full of violence and sin. And all these kingdoms that are mentioned already, what terrible things they did. All right, they were wicked. And from a human standpoint, the earthly kingdoms, they're all metal and durable and strong. In God's viewpoint, they're ferocious beasts that must be taken care of. So that's in Daniel chapter 7. We're still a few weeks away from that. But just some practical things as I clue off here. Daniel had perfect confidence and peace because he knew God's plan for the future, that God had a plan. He didn't know all the details. And as Christians today, we are living in some uncertain times. I mean, I know I've said that previous to the COVID-19 situation, but now we're living in even more uncertain times. Hey, we can have peace to know that God has a plan. We don't know each step. We don't know tomorrow, but we can be sure that God does know, and we can have peace in our hearts because he knows. And he's not leaving us out to dry. He's not leaving us out to hang. No, God has a plan. I can trust God. That's what Daniel did, and we can do it too. Daniel demonstrates a man of God. I don't think that this was particularly easy days for Daniel and his friends. I mean, imagine the executioner coming to your house right now and saying, get in the wagon. We're going to lop off your heads or burn down your whatever. I don't know exactly what they were going to do to Daniel besides executing him and his friends. So this was scary, but even in a scary day, he trusted Jehovah. and the Lord provided. And he praised his name for his provision. And as I said, we have some uncertainty in our day as well. We can have the peace knowing that God is working out his perfect will in our lives, in this world. Someone asked me the other day about the whole virus thing, and listen, it didn't take God by surprise. God allowed it. I don't think it's a judgment as such. I don't know, but it's definitely bringing us as individual believers to a realization that we need to make sure things are right. And I believe lost people are being challenged by the gospel. I believe those things. But God has a perfect will. This is all part of God's will for this world, and He's working it out. As the Lord, and we need to ask the Lord to help us to be men and women that demonstrate that peace of God. You believe that your neighbors will notice if you're at peace. You better believe your co-workers will notice if you're at peace. Because the world is not proclaiming peace. You watch the social media or the news, it's to stir up, instigate fear. This one said this and this one said that. Hey, go to the source of truth, the Word of God. See what it has to say. See what the truth has to say. It doesn't matter if you're a child, teenager, young adult, middle-aged, senior. We all can praise his name for the provision he's providing for us right now. He's good to us. He is so good to us. And we need to praise his name for it. And that's what Daniel did when he was given the answers. And he would go on and demonstrate that throughout his life. And we'll look at that in the days ahead. So I hope that's been a challenge to you today. And just to help you understand God's timetable, it's important. It really helps you today, because you might hear things by different groups, by different people on YouTube, by different people on Facebook who are not having a problem with Facebook Live. That might be proclaiming something that's not right. So what does God's word have to say about it? It will encourage you to know the truth. Will help you. So just some reminders as we close off. Tuesday and Thursday, 6 p.m. Pastor Matt's on agenda for us this week, so we'll look forward to that. Saturday morning, 8:30, I'll be on, so we'll look at the devotional time. I do believe that there will be an article going out this week via our church email list, so I really appreciate the folks who've been writing articles. They've been encouragement to me, and I know to others, so keep it up and go through it and enjoy it. Next Sunday, we'll finish up on Revelation. And then next Sunday night, we'll continue in Daniel. And then keep encouraging others. Text them, call them, email them, and provoke others onto good works. And if we do continue to have problems with the Facebook, we'll look into some other things that might be a help, that we can be a little bit more not so choppy. I don't like that myself. But we'll let you know as we go through this week. We might do a test run here and there just to see how things are going. I do know other pastors told me today they had issues today on Facebook. So we'll see what happens. But I'm glad that you joined us. It's encouraging to see your remarks on the side. Oh, I forgot. The winners. We have winners, don't we? Well, I know in our world we're all winners, but winners of the contest, the quiz. So, what do you win? Besides a congratulations. Okay, so when we get back to church, and I hope it's sooner rather than later, you have free coffee on the house, all right? Go on down to Legacy Cafe. Remember that place? Legacy Cafe. Head on down there, and you'll have a free coffee. You don't put nothing in anywhere. It's free on us. And I'm going to be honest. I think there might be donuts the first week. There might be donuts for a few weeks. I don't know. We'll see how that all patterns out. But at any rate, that's if you won. Pastor Matt said you won on the side on the chat there. He'll have it marked down, and we'll make sure you get your prize for being good students. But hey, there'll be another quiz next week. All right. Okay. Yeah, I'll let you have tea. Not a problem. Well, whatever is there. Oh, did Debbie win? I don't think Debbie won, did she? But she can have donuts too. I have no problem with donuts. Yeah, I like that idea. All right, so we'll look forward to seeing you on Tuesday. And oh, Krispy Kreme. I got to stop reading the notes on the side. I like that idea, Sharon. Krispy Kreme donuts that first Sunday back. Yeah, approved. All right. So keep exploring the Word. Keep looking to Jesus. And if you don't have something in particular that you're studying out, hey, I'm letting you know right now. Read chapter 3 of Daniel. Get in Revelation and read the next church, Laodicean church. And that'll be a great thing for you to think about this week and study as we get ready for Sunday. And we'll be together again. And I certainly look forward to the digital format. And I'm super looking forward to being together again physically. And so thankful for each and every one of you. Have a great night, and may the Lord bless you. Have a great week.